Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar. It's about 2 o'clock and I think we're ready to get started. My name is Noelle Porter and I'm a Program and Policy Analyst at the National Alliance to End Homelessness. I would like to welcome you to our webinar on employment solutions for people experiencing homelessness. The National Alliance to End Homelessness uses data and research, policy, and capacity building to work toward a future without homelessness. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that all of the lines will be muted during the webinar. If you have questions at any point, you can send them to us through the webinar software. Please type them into the chat box labeled Questions on your webinar control panel. We will have time at the end of the webinar to answer many of your questions. We have many participants for today's webinar, so while we will do our best to get to as many questions as possible, we may not get to all of them. Also, please note that a recording of this webinar will be posted on the Alliance's website by early next week. To begin our webinar, Caitlin Schnurr from the Heartland Alliance will introduce some of the arms of the National Initiatives on Poverty and Economic Opportunity, a program of the Heartland Alliance, and she will discuss how the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act can help connect homeless job seekers with employment. Next, Chris Worland from the Heartland Alliance will introduce the WIOA Toolkit that National Initiatives has developed. And finally, Nancy Leverin from King County in Washington will discuss strategies and partnerships for employment services. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Caitlin.
Great, thanks so much. And I'm just going to wait a second for our slides to pull up. Just want to thank our partners at NAEH as well as Nancy for joining us today. Great, so I'm seeing the slides and I'm going to get started. Again, welcome to today's webinar, Meeting the Needs of Job Seekers Experiencing Homelessness. My name is Caitlin Schnurr and I'm the National Initiatives Coordinator at Heartland Alliance's National Initiatives on Poverty and Economic Opportunity. Next slide, please. Great. So just to quickly introduce our team, that's a photo of us. Again, we're the National Initiatives on Poverty and Economic Opportunity at Heartland Alliance, and we're dedicated to ending chronic unemployment and poverty. We do our work in a few different ways. First, we do field building, where we support and guide more effective and sustainable employment efforts in the field, especially for job seekers facing barriers to employment. And we also do policy and advocacy work to advance solutions to the systemic issues that drive chronic unemployment. We have 3 national initiatives: the National Transitional Jobs Network, or the NTJN, our body of work related to employment and Black male achievement, or our Be More initiative, and finally, the National Center on Employment and Homelessness, or NCEH. Next slide, please. So just to explain NCEH a little bit more, the National Center for Employment and Homelessness works to ensure that employment in quality jobs is a key part of preventing and ending homelessness. And we have 3 strategies that drive our work. One is advancing systems change by building connections between the public workforce, homeless services, and other systems serving homeless job seekers. So some of you on the call may be familiar with our Connections Project. Our Connections Project is a part of this work. It's a 3-year project aimed at finding new systems-level innovations and partnerships in communities nationwide to help improve employment and economic opportunity for homeless job seekers. And Nancy, who is coming on a little bit later in this webinar, is from one of our Connections Project sites, so you'll get to hear a little bit more about that work. 2, we also identify and advance evidence-based employment interventions. So basically, we're making sure we have an ear to the ground and are lifting up the best and most promising practices to the field. And finally, we promote employment as an element of preventing and ending homelessness through relevant federal legislation, appropriations, and programs. Next slide, please. So this is an overview of some of our different resources. We have many different policy and program level resources to support the field, and we organize many of them into toolkits. I just want to call everyone's attention to our Working to End Homelessness Toolkit. We have a picture there in the upper right-hand corner. So that toolkit contains information on designing and implementing employment programming for people experiencing homelessness. So it might be a useful resource to explore later on. Next slide, please. So in this webinar, we're introducing our new WIOA Planning and Implementation Toolkit. So this toolkit really shows how a range of stakeholders can help ensure WIOA increases employment and economic opportunity for job seekers facing barriers to employment, and that includes homeless job seekers. We have 2 policy advocacy briefs that are a part of this toolkit, and we'll speak about those briefs in depth during this webinar. And also during this webinar, we'll highlight some of the other resources in the toolkit, and that includes materials on how to make the case for why the public workforce system should prioritize job seekers facing barriers, alternative sources of federal funding for workforce development programs, and more. Next slide, please. Great. So I wanted to give a very high-level overview of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, also known as WIOA. So WIOA was signed into law in July of 2014. So right now we're in the initial stages of implementation, and the public workforce system is transitioning from its old framework under the Workforce Investment Act, or WIA, over to its new framework under WIOA. So there isn't new money under WIOA, but what the law really does is reorients the public workforce system towards serving people facing barriers to employment. And that wasn't always the case under the old legislation. So the WIOA statute explicitly states that one of the goals of the public workforce system is to prepare individuals, and especially individuals facing barriers to employment, to succeed in the labor market. And WIOA, in its definition of people facing barriers to employment, includes homeless job seekers. So that is why everything that we'll talk about today is especially relevant for folks in the homeless services world. Next slide, please. Great. So there have been a number of changes to the public workforce system under WIOA that can help homeless job seekers succeed in employment, and I'm going to give an overview of these. So for one, the law eliminates something called the sequence of services. So before WIOA, even if it was clear that a job seeker needed job training to succeed in employment, he or she still had to go through a sequence of less intensive or core services, which included activities such as job search that just weren't likely to be successful for someone facing significant barriers to work. So under WIOA, people facing barriers can move straight into more intensive services, such as job training. So it's really easier for them to access the services that they need in a timely fashion. WIOA also has made some key changes to performance measures. So under the old law, the public workforce system levels of performance didn't really incentivize the system to serve job seekers facing barriers. And levels of performance under WIOA will be based on economic conditions and participant characteristics. And those characteristics can include lack of work experience, lack of educational attainment, and whether or not someone is experiencing homelessness. So ideally, the new way of measuring how the system is performing should reduce historical disincentives to serving job seekers facing barriers, again, including homeless job seekers. WIOA also includes transitional jobs, or TJ, as an allowable use of funds. So TJ is an evidence-based workforce development model that combines wage-paid work, job skills training, and supportive services to help people facing barriers to employment succeed in work. So states and communities can now add transitional jobs to their menu of workforce development strategies for homeless job seekers. WIOA also allows community-based organizations with expertise serving people facing barriers to sit on local workforce investment boards, or WIBs. So again, this is really an opportunity for folks who have experience working with homeless job seekers to inform, educate, and guide how the public workforce system can help meet these job seekers' needs as well as their interests. And finally, state and local workforce plans have to articulate how they'll serve people facing barriers to employment. So state plans are being written now, and they need to be submitted to the Department of Labor and Education in March of 2016. And as we'll discuss a little bit later in this webinar, participating in the development of those state plans is really an opportunity to ensure that the needs and interests of homeless job seekers are taken into account. Next slide, please. I also wanted to briefly touch on WIOA's definition of homelessness. So the definition includes folks who might not be considered homeless in other contexts or under other definitions of homelessness. So it's quite inclusive. For example, it includes people who are doubled up, living with family or friends, or living in a motel or hotel due to a lack of other options. So we see this as an opportunity to leverage employment and support services as a homeless prevention strategy before folks formally enter the homeless services system. So with that, Chris, I'm going to pass it off to you. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Caitlin. So what we'll do now is briefly discuss what is really the flagship document in the WIOA Implementation Toolkit, which we've titled "It Takes a Community." And what we've intended for this particular document to provide is a set of very practical and actionable recommendations for various stakeholders that are interested in supporting employment services for people with barriers to employment or people who are chronically unemployed or disconnected from the labor market, in order to help inform and guide and influence the implementation of WIOA at the state and local levels. And so we've broken down those recommendations by the various roles of stakeholders that might want to get involved in the process. And that includes advocates, including policy advocates, community organizers, et cetera, community-based organizations that are providing services to people with barriers to employment, leaders in various public systems, leaders of philanthropic foundations and funders, as well as people who are involved in research and gathering and disseminating data around the workforce and employment needs of people with barriers. So in the course of the guide of It Takes a Community, you'll be able to kind of select your individual role as a stakeholder in this process and get some specific ideas for how you can get involved and how you can influence the process, so that when the plans are released and implemented, they're actually reflecting the intent of the law and showing meaningful change around how these individuals are served through our public workforce development system. It's important to note as well that under the new law, there are a lot of really positive changes, but many of those changes really won't be fully realized without planning that happens at the state and local level. There are a lot of opportunities under WIOA implementation for not much to change. And so in order to really see meaningful change, and in order to see the intent of the law fully realized, and to see people experiencing homelessness really experience better access to the public workforce system, you have a really critical role to play in influencing those plans, advocating for the needs of the people that you're serving, and making sure that real change actually does happen. Throughout the course of all of these documents, we talk about individuals with barriers to employment more broadly. However, as Caitlin explained, the law really contains a very inclusive definition of people experiencing homelessness, and explicitly identifies people experiencing homelessness as individuals with barriers to employment. And so everything that we discuss today and everything that you'll read in the toolkit is directly applicable to people experiencing homelessness as they seek out employment. We've broken down the It Takes a Community document according to 4 broad goals. Under each of these goals, you'll see a key question, and then, as I've noted, some specific ideas for various individuals and organizations to play in bringing about that goal. So the first goal that we've identified is leveraging data. WIOA requires that state and local boards gather and analyze data about people in their service area that are experiencing barriers to employment. And so the key question here is, does my community have a good grasp on the scope, scale, and workforce needs of homeless job seekers? And in this case, when it comes to gathering data, you as stakeholders in the homeless services field can really help to urge state and local boards to include data and an analysis of the employment needs of job seekers experiencing homelessness specifically. And you're also in a unique position to actually deliver some of those data to those state and local boards, including what you know specifically about the needs of homeless job seekers in your community based on your service delivery or your research or the work that you're performing in the field. And also, another really critical piece is to bring the voices of lived experience to this process, and to make sure that the individuals who are affected by homelessness and who are potentially seeking services under WIOA are really able to communicate their employment needs and what their experiences are like as they seek services. The implementation goal number 2 is to align resources and strategies. And the key question that we've identified is, do my community's available workforce, services, and supports for homeless job seekers meet their needs? This is a difficult question to answer, but it's a critical one, and it requires really looking at all of the services and resources that are available in your state and community and making a determination about whether or not those are really meeting the needs of the people who are seeking services. Some ideas for stakeholders are to really just bring a diverse group of voices to this process, including the voices of homeless job seekers, and also to inform state and local boards about what evidence-based practice really looks like in employment services for job seekers who are experiencing homelessness. We want to make sure that that workforce boards understand what are the practices and models that are specifically effective for serving job seekers experiencing homelessness, so that you're able to identify where those services are, whether or not they have the capacity to meet the need in the community, and to make sure that the services that are delivered are actually appropriate and effective specifically for people experiencing homelessness. This also, we sometimes refer to this process as asset mapping, and we actually have a document in the toolkit that we'll touch on briefly a little later that outlines and describes some of the processes in mapping the available services, resources, and assets that are available in your state or community for homeless job seekers. The next goal, and this should be goal number 3, which is about partnering effectively. And the key question there is, how can combined state planning efforts benefit homeless job seekers in my state? We won't talk about this for very long right now, because when I'm done talking about this document, Caitlin will give us an overview of another resource in the toolkit, which is specifically focused on how states can leverage opportunities for combined state planning with the Department of Housing and Urban Development to make sure that, that those processes and services are aligned, that goals are aligned, and various other advantages to engaging in combined state planning. And then finally, the fourth WIOA implementation goal is around ensuring accountability and evaluation. The key question is, how can my community and state intentionally prioritize homeless job seekers and maintain our focus over time? One of the things that's, as I mentioned, really critical as states are entering the planning process right now is to be advocates for the intent of the law and to make sure that the plans that are being developed at the state level and at the local level are actually going to meaningfully result in changes to service delivery for job seekers experiencing homelessness in ways that improve the likelihood of their success in getting and finding quality work. As I mentioned, there's no guarantee that the changes in the law will be really fully reflected in state and local implementation unless we really advocate and make sure that they are. There are other opportunities such as weighing in on the development of the new performance measures. The performance measures in the past, as Caitlin noted, have been in some cases a barrier to workforce boards to really providing effective and appropriate services for people with barriers, including homeless job seekers. And so these changes have not been fully developed yet, to make sure that that there are not any disincentives to serving homeless job seekers, so that that if workforce boards are making an earnest effort to better serve the populations that we care about, that they won't be in any way penalized when it comes to evaluating their performance. And then finally, just providing support and information for ongoing evaluation processes, so that in the coming years, as the new law is implemented and new services and modes of service delivery are developed, to have another look down the road and make sure that that the changes are actually resulting in better outcomes for people with barriers to employment and job seekers experiencing homelessness. All right, at this point, I will turn it back over to Caitlin, who will discuss another resource in the toolkit around combined state planning.
Great, thanks so much, Chris. So as Chris mentioned, another one of the resources in our new toolkit is a policy advocacy brief, and it's called Systems Working Together to End Homelessness, WIOA and HUD Combined State Planning. So combined state planning is a unique opportunity under WIOA to really align the workforce and homeless services systems. This brief offers stakeholders ideas for leveraging the combined state planning process, again, to make sure that homeless job seekers can succeed in work. Next slide, please. Great. So what is a combined state plan? WIOA is all about partnerships. Under WIOA, states can develop statewide plans to coordinate the public workforce system with other public systems and partners. So states have to develop joint plans with the core WIOA programs. That includes programs like adult education and literacy programs. But states can also choose to develop combined state plans with other systems, including employment and training activities carried out by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. And those include, but aren't limited to, programs such as the Community Development Block Grant Program and Continuum of Care Program. So combined state planning matters for a few reasons, more of which I'll touch on the next slide. But two quick reasons. One, we know that public systems are better at solving big problems like homelessness and chronic unemployment when they work together. And two, participating or creating a combined state plan can help the homeless services system meet its own employment goals So the homeless services system is becoming increasingly accountable for employment outcomes. We can see that in the federal strategic plan to prevent and end homelessness, as well as the HeartHac's performance measures. So by aligning with the public workforce, the homeless services system is more likely to achieve these outcomes. Next slide, please. Also, and most importantly, combined state planning can benefit homeless job seekers. So to just go through the reasons highlighted here, combined state planning can help make sure that states are identifying and implementing robust employment and support services for homeless job seekers. It can also improve referral processes between the two systems, making it more likely that homeless job seekers will be able to access the services that they need. Combined state planning can also spur innovative system coordination ideas. Those ideas could include, including employment supports and coordinated access and assessment processes, or the use of employment navigators to help homeless job seekers access the workforce development supports that they need. And I think Nancy, who is up next, may touch on some more of these system coordination ideas, but overall these types of strategies make it more likely that homeless job seekers will receive appropriate workforce services. And finally, by combining efforts, both systems will be able to use their existing resources and their capacity more effectively. Next slide, please. Great. So how can homeless services stakeholders help support HUD and WIOA combined state planning? Again, all of the points on this slide are communicated and discussed in greater depth in our brief. So I'm just going to touch on a few of them here, and some of this is just to drive home some of the points that Chris made as well in his presentation. So one, communicate what you know about homeless job seekers. This means really getting involved in the WIOA planning process. This is a really important step. The planning is happening now. Again, those plans are due this coming March, so now is the time to get involved. So local workforce boards can include representatives from community-based service organizations that have expertise working with homeless job seekers. But it's likely that these CBOs will need to approach public workforce system leaders and ask to participate in the planning process and share this knowledge. So again, just to flag some of the important knowledge that homeless services stakeholders have, that can include just overall knowledge about the characteristics of homeless job seekers, what employment services homeless job seekers are currently able to access, service gaps and needs in the community, as well as just the needs and interests of these job seekers. And again, as Chris mentioned, by partnering in the WIOA planning process, again, is a great opportunity to really make sure that folks with lived experience are able to participate in the planning process. Chris had also already touched on just helping to inform new performance measures. So again, just to drive home that point, we really want to make sure that the system is being held accountable for performance based on who the system is supposed to serve. So again, just bringing your experience to the process so that those performance measures are accurate. And finally, stakeholders can help monitor the public workforce system and support continuous improvement. So we know that combined state planning processes might surface misconceptions about the characteristics of homeless job seekers, or differences in culture and orientation between the workforce and homeless services systems. So stakeholders can really help address these misconceptions and help the public workforce system serve homeless job seekers by supporting cross-training efforts between the systems. So those types of cross-training efforts would open up opportunities to just share and exchange knowledge, to do myth-busting, and to work towards solutions. Those are the end of my slides, so I'm going to pass it back to Chris. But again, I just wanted to emphasize that the combined state planning is just an option. It's not required. So it's definitely a great advocacy opportunity. Thanks.
All right, thanks very much, Caitlin. So the remaining resources in the toolkit we won't give quite as much time to. There are a number of additional resources that are available through the toolkit, and we're also in the process of developing some additional resources for this toolkit around best practices and recommendations for serving out-of-school youth, as well as some recommendations for workforce boards around implementing transitional jobs programming. So the toolkit still has some additional new resources that will be added to it as we continue with our work. But currently there are a number of additional resources still in the toolkit, including the one that you see before you, which is around governors' discretionary funds. Much like under WIA, under WIOA, governors can set aside 15% of WIOA funding to support special projects. There's a lot of flexibility with regard to how those discretionary funds are used. But in many cases, they're used to fund innovative initiatives. In many cases, those can be used specifically for innovative workforce initiatives targeting individuals with barriers to employment. And so within the discretionary funding resource, we include a number of recommendations or possible ideas for how governors can use their discretionary funding to support programs that serve individuals with barriers to employment or chronically unemployed people, including just a few of the number of recommendations included could be promoting contextualized adult basic education that is connected to workforce activities, paid work experience, and transitional jobs. It could include the development of career pathways models that include on-ramps to employment for job seekers with barriers, and a number of other possible ideas for how governors could use those discretionary funds to serve people with barriers. It's also often the case that decision makers might need to be further persuaded about the necessity of using scarce public resources to support employment programming that's targeting people who have the most barriers to employment. Often that means funding more intensive services, and because there is no new funding being made available under WIOA, if you want to increase investment in one area, it means sometimes making compromises in other areas. And so it's really important to have a full set of persuasive arguments for why public funding should be used to support the services that we know are effective for helping people with the most barriers to employment succeed in work, including people experiencing homelessness. And so this resource contains a number of different rationales for helping to persuade decision makers to make those investments, including data and research findings around the broader economic effects of helping people who are disconnected from the workforce become workers, and how it can actually result in good stewardship of public resources based on return on investment for making those investments in job seekers that are facing barriers. We also have a couple of resources that really are just intended to clarify some of the more technical aspects of the public workforce system under WIOA, including some of the required elements in state and local WIOA plans and how those plans differ and what the obligations of state and local workforce boards are in including various elements in their WIOA plans, as well as a delineation of just the functions of state and local boards and how the functions differ among state and local workforce boards. So really just an attempt to kind of clarify some of the more technical aspects and how the system works from the state and local planning perspective. And then, as we mentioned before, we have a resource dedicated to helping states and communities ask the right questions around mapping the resources and assets and services that are available to job seekers facing barriers to employment in their states and communities. And so this resource contains a wide range of questions, including some very difficult questions that need to be asked in order to help determine what services exist, where the capacity is, and where the gaps are between the services that are available and the needs of job seekers in your state or area. And then finally, of course, everyone's always interested in funding sources and how to bring more resources to what can often be resource-intensive employment interventions and services. It's worth noting in many cases when people think about public funding and public support for workforce development, they think specifically of the Department of Labor and the services that are funded under WIOA and now WIOA. And it's really important to note that WIOA funding is just one of many federal funding streams that can support employment services and support employment services for people with barriers to employment. And so this resource takes the form of a matrix that runs down all of the available federal funding streams for employment services and then identifies which types of services are funded and supported by that particular funding stream. And it includes funding sources like Community Development Block Grants, the Second Chance Act, SNAP Employment and Training Funds, TANF, and others. And so it gives a kind of a complete picture of all of the different ways in which the federal government supports employment programming and what those dollars can be used for and how they can be accessed. All right, and so before we move on to hearing from Nancy in Seattle-King County, you have here Caitlin's contact information as well as mine. We are available to be resources to you, and you can feel free to contact us directly. If you have any further questions or are interested in receiving technical assistance from the National Initiatives team and the National Center on Employment and Homelessness. I would also point out to you that our URL, our web address, is at the bottom of the page there, and that's where you can access the WIOA Implementation Toolkit, as well as other resources, best practice guides, and toolkits to help support your work. As Caitlin mentioned at the outset of our portion of this webinar, if you're interested in learning more about the specific types of service delivery and program models and principles that are most effective in helping job seekers experiencing homelessness access employment, access quality work with the goal of becoming and remaining stably housed and employed, I would urge you to look specifically at our Working to End Homelessness Toolkit, which contains several resources that really kind of break down what effective and promising practice looks like in the delivery of actual employment services. And if you're going to advocate to your state and local decision makers around the kinds of services that should be supported under WIOA, that would be a very useful resource for you to understand exactly what those effective services look like. All right, thanks very much for your time, and we will now turn it over to Nancy. Go ahead, Nancy.
As Caitlin introduced me earlier, my name is Nancy Lovren, and I work for King County Government up here in Seattle-King County. I'm the administrator of our employment and education resources in the Department of Community and Human Services. We are one of the team members that was fortunate enough to receive the Home and Work Connections project from Heartland Alliance, and we're excited to begin that work. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about that project and share with you some of the things we are attempting to do to align WIOA with our project. Next slide. Thank you. Our project basically focuses on aligning our housing and employment systems for a coordinated entry approach for individuals who are homeless or experiencing homelessness. So when they access a system to find some shelter, to find some housing, they're going to be connected to the larger and broader employment system. So to begin our work, we realized we needed key partnerships, and we brought to the table our continuum of care partnership, now called All Home. It was recently changed from Committee to End Homelessness. It is now called All Home. We also have the City of Seattle at the table, King County Government. We have our Seattle-King County Workforce Development Council. That's our WIB, and they have oversight on WIOA. We have United Way and a group called Building Changes, which is a local nonprofit organization that receives philanthropic dollars to work on issues related to homelessness. So we feel very strongly that we've got a great, diverse group of people at the table to tackle this project. Next slide, please. One of the major pieces of our projects involves coordinating with the larger WIOA one-stop system. In Washington State, we call our American Job Centers WorkSource. And the WorkSource system in Seattle-King County is very robust. And I want to give you just a few pieces of information about that. Initially, it has one primary major center that is managed by King County government. It has 6 what we call WorkSource affiliates. And these are brick and mortar sites that sometimes are a little smaller than the center or may not have all the partners there, but they're pretty much very robust, all 6 of them. And then we have something called 22 WorkSource connection sites. And these are smaller sites where people can simply connect to the broader system. And they include our library system, some of our community colleges. And just recently, we added a couple connection sites that would focus on homeless job seekers. We're very excited to do that. We have now put our hand up to get an AmeriCorps staff member to focus exclusively on the 22 connection sites, providing technical assistance and making sure that they're appropriately and effectively connected to the broader system. In addition to the brick and mortar sites, the center, the affiliates, the connection sites, we also have something called a Seattle-King County Operator Team. The Operator Team is in charge of integrating this broad system, and King County government is the operator. And we coordinate closely with our local WIB. They contract with us to do that. So not only do we manage the large center, but we also are in charge of the Operator Team. The Operator Team has 3 staff. The first staff member focuses on integration of this elaborate system. The second team member focuses on training and education, both of job seekers and of staff in the WorkSource system, designs curricula. And the third staff member focuses on marketing and communications in the broad WorkSource system. There are roughly about 429 staff in this system, and we see about 7,000 individual job seekers a month. We've got 13 community and technical colleges in Seattle-King County. And we are in the enviable position of having a 3.9% unemployment rate in September. And so we are very acutely aware that if you're not working in Seattle-King County today, it's because you may be experiencing some barriers. And we want to make sure that this system is going to be responsive and effective for serving all job seekers that would like to work, regardless of their barriers. Next slide, please. So as we begin our project to look at homeless job seekers, we have brought the funders to the table. And some of our significant funding streams do include our Building Changes partner that has system innovation grants. United Way has made significant investments locally in employment and training providers in Seattle-King County, and they're at the table, as well as the City of Seattle that has projects for homeless youth and homeless adults. King County, who I work for, has something called the Veterans and Human Services Levy, And in that levy, we have funded homeless employment specifically, and we intend to do more of that in the future. And our local Workforce Development Council, our WIB, has homeless employment funding as well as the oversight for WIOA. Finally, we are in Washington State and locally, we do utilize the SNAP ENT funding. In our state, we call it BFET, Basic Food and Education Training. And many of our providers are BFET providers as well, and King County also administers BFET, as does our local WIB, is now in charge of managing a new pilot innovation grant called the RISE. And this has come out federally, but it stands for Resources to Initiate Successful Employment, and it is the leveraging of this SNAP ENT funding to go even further and provide services that involve work experience and intensive case management, and it includes specifically working with homeless job seekers. Finally, we just recently had an announcement that our Seattle Jobs Initiative was appointed to create and run the nation's first Center of Excellence for the SNAP employment and training system. So right in our neighborhood, we now have the first Center of Excellence and the experts just blocks away, and we consider that a major, a huge major gift to our system, and it will help us a great deal to go forward in using SNAP ENT. Next slide, please. So some of our strategies in this project and beyond are to align our homeless employment funding. We'd like to get the funders in the room and make sure we all understand who we're serving and the best way to do that. We will be landscape the mapping of the employment strategy, and we're looking forward to using the community asset mapping tool that's in the toolkit to do that. We're going to be coordinating our housing and employment entry for homeless families, and we're going to be doing it through the creation of hubs where we can create referral processes and identify best practices. Although this is not 100% sure yet, we do intend to utilize the workforce system as points of entry, as these hubs, and we would like to integrate our housing providers into the service hubs. And in those service hubs currently, in the one-stop, are our WIOA providers. So they're already working closely in integrated settings in the workforce, and now the discussion is coming about as to the best way to now add coordinated entry for homeless housing resources. We have and we will continue to train our WIOA service providers on homeless employment strategies and providing support. And one of our strong strategies is that we are aligning the WIOA business team with our home and work connections projects. And one of our strategies in that project is to create a business leaders task force. So we're bringing the WIOA employer business side of the house to the homeless job seeker coordination effort. We're looking very forward to that. Our WIOA business team is currently 10 members strong, and they work throughout Seattle, King County in the Workforce One-Stop to market employers and work on hiring events. And they've been highly successful in creating a network of employment opportunities through marketing the businesses. Next slide, please. Finally, this is just an example of what's taking place through this elaborate coordination and connection to the WIOA system. The King County's homeless employment contractors funded under our levy are integrated with the WIOA providers in the one-stop. These teams work together to serve the homeless job seekers. So we're leveraging local dollars through our levy with federal dollars through our WIOA providers, and the local dollars we leverage can be leveraged with the broader SNAP ENT funding. Our WIOA business team holds hiring events, as I said earlier, and many of them are targeted at homeless job seekers. Just recently, Amazon approached our system and said, we would like to do some hiring specifically for individuals that are homeless. We'd like to give them an opportunity. And we were able to deploy the WIOA system to get those events started. And I believe they had 10 conditional offers the other day at their first event. So that's very exciting to see business step in and to have the infrastructure in place through WIOA to respond to business. We have systems innovation grants through Building Changes, and the recipients of those grants are also WIOA providers. So we're starting to align the funding in the same provider and their expertise so they can leverage their dollars. And finally, the King County Operator Team, under the leadership of our local WIB, knits the WIOA system together with the broader system, including funders. And so we use this team to try to create one holistic system that will be serving everyone from the highly qualified dislocated worker who just got laid off all the way down to the individual that may have never worked before or is experiencing a great barrier like homelessness or disability or are long-term unemployed. So that's it in a nutshell of what we're doing out in Seattle, King County. Thank you for the opportunity to share that.
All right, thank you very much, Nancy.
Sure.
All right, so now we have an opportunity for questions, and we're going to read through a few that we received in the chat panel and the questions function on the webinar, and you guys can feel free to keep sending a couple of those. And if there's time left at the end, we might remove attendees from mute and see if we have any additional questions. One of our first questions says, will veterans housed through HUD-VASH be considered homeless? And while the technical definition of a veteran who has now been housed through HUD-VASH means that they are in permanent supportive housing and are no longer technically considered homeless, it's likely that they may still have some high barriers to employment. So I think a really great question to sort of ask from this is, can WIOA be used for formerly homeless people as well, if they still have high barriers to employment?
Hi, this is Caitlin. I can take that question, and then Chris or Nancy, if you have more to add, that's fine. So, yeah, just to re-emphasize, so WIOA basically is guiding the federal public workforce system to prioritize folks who have barriers to employment. So, although a veteran who is housed in permanent supportive housing might not fall under the definition of homelessness, that person might fall under how WIOA defines individuals facing barriers to employment. So we lay out the definition in that it takes a community brief on page 8, but it does include low-income individuals. It includes older individuals. Let's see here. It includes long-term unemployed individuals, and the governor also has some discretion in defining additional populations who are facing barriers to employment. So my inclination would be to say that someone who is housed in permanent supportive housing, a veteran, would likely still be a fall under that definition of an individual facing barriers to employment. Although, just to clarify, the public workforce system isn't only for folks who are facing barriers to employment, but under WIOA is taking a greater focus and placing greater priority on folks facing or experiencing barriers.
Yeah, Katie, I think that, I'm sorry, Nancy?
No, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, no, I was just saying that I think that Caitlin's answer to that question was great. I don't have anything to add to that other than to say that, you know, of course, also the VA or various VAs have employment services that they deliver specifically to veterans as well, and so that is an option as well. I know that a number of VAs offer both supported employment services and transitional job services to some of the veterans that they serve.
Awesome, thank you. We've got another question that came in through the question function asking, what is an example of an evidence-based practice for job seekers?
You know, as I noted, you know, we have a lot of evidence-based and promising practices and program models outlined in our Working to End Homelessness Toolkit. One example, or a few examples, the evidence-based program models that we discuss include both transitional jobs and supported employment, also known as individualized placement and support. We also talk about some additional promising models such as alternative staffing, as well as some other techniques for providing employment opportunities to people experiencing homelessness, such as job sharing or job carving. And those are all described in detail in our models brief in the toolkit, the Working to End Homelessness Toolkit. Some of the practices, and you know, the process for putting together that toolkit and that set of resources included both an extensive review of the research literature as well as a year-long community of practice that we put together, comprised of exemplary program providers from around the country, representing various models and approaches, as well as a lot of you know, geographic diversity and diversity of the populations that they were targeting. And we took note of a few kind of pervasive and universal practices and principles that, regardless of what model people were following, these kind of came into their service delivery in one way or another. And so we outline all of those in our, what we call our principles brief in the Working to End Homelessness Toolkit. It includes things like practicing trauma-informed care in an employment context, using motivational interviewing in an employment services context as a way of drawing out and building up an individual's confidence and motivation for pursuing work if they're experiencing ambivalence or lack of confidence around their ability to enter the workforce. It includes this notion of meeting people where they are and incorporating the stages of change as a way of understanding where an individual is with regard to their readiness to engage in work. All of the programs in one way or another really focused on rapid attachment to work and making sure that as soon as an individual says they want to work, that the processes are put in motion to actually help that individual seek out and find employment, rather than telling someone that they're not ready, or mandating that they go through various lengthy periods of training or preparation to pursue work, but rather focusing on consumer choice with regard to when an individual is ready to pursue employment. Those are just a few off the top of my head out of many, many more evidence-based and promising practices that are included in that toolkit. And so I would encourage anyone who's interested to spend a little bit of time with those pieces as well.
Great, thank you all. We have another question that says, now that WDCs can provide WIOA services directly, and Nancy, I think this is for you, will King County see some changes in the way in which these services interact with the housing system?
Providing services directly, and that had not been my understanding under WIOA. Can somebody clarify?
You might have been coming off of mute. I think we missed the first part of your sentence.
Oh, can we clarify that WDCs have now been given the authority under WIOA to provide services directly? I was not sure I had understood that. Our local WDC subcontracts out their WIOA services to local community-based organizations through competitive bids. And I fully expect that that work will align with the housing efforts, given that they are also at the table for our recent Home and Work Connections project. So I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but I'd like to be as responsive as possible.
Okay, we'll try to get some clarification maybe through the chat function or the questions, and we'll move on to a different one for the moment. We've been asked if someone can share a concrete example of how a workforce council has collaborated with local partner to provide employment opportunities for homeless job seekers.
But when the hiring events occur in our local system, it is our Workforce Development Council that coordinates the business team and the workforce system itself to make sure that when we are marketing hiring events, we are marketing to all the providers in the system, including our homeless employment providers. So they're bringing individuals that are experiencing homelessness to the recruiting table after having done some work with them to get them ready. And then just recently, Amazon did reach out and say, help us, and it was, they reached out to our Workforce Development Council, our local WIB, is my understanding, and they were able to deploy those resources specifically for Amazon. But that is a fairly common occurrence, at least in Seattle-King County. All job seekers are included.
So here's a great follow-up question for that. We had a listener who said, Nancy, I'm encouraged by Amazon's commitment to hiring homeless individuals. Given that many of them may have experienced trauma, does the workforce system work with Amazon and other employers who may be in similar circumstances to implement trauma-informed practices to best support these individuals while they're in the workplace?
Plan with a case manager. So we do intensive case management and people have employment plans. And it is my understanding that those individuals are receiving certainly one-on-one case management and supports. Exactly, specifically what, I'm not privy to that, although I can say after listening to this webinar today that this trauma-informed care as a best practice is something that I would like to see much more in our system. And I'll be introducing that in our Home and Work Connections project and in our operator team and certainly with our local WDC planners. So I think there's room to grow in that area, but I can certainly assert that people are given individualized case management services to prepare them for employment that oftentimes could include the trauma-informed care.
Thank you, Nancy.
Hello, this is Chris. I would add that in our work, we have worked with various other programs that to some degree or another have offered training, support, or education to their employer partners with regard to how to practice kind of a trauma-informed approach to employing individuals who have experienced trauma. It can be, kind of difficult sometimes to have that kind of access to employers so that they, that they'll actually, respond to that kind of education and or training. But in some cases, we've seen it be successful. The example that comes to mind is a program that we featured in our Opportunity Youth Employment Toolkit that we also developed recently, and it's Larkin Street in San Francisco, and they serve youth experiencing homelessness. And they actually have training for their employer partners on how to recognize a response to trauma in the workplace and to respond appropriately, as well as to avoid re-traumatizing the worker in the workplace. And so this is something that we're just starting to see emerge, but something that we really we support wholeheartedly. And truly anybody who's experienced homelessness has experienced trauma. And so employment services that are that are focused on serving people experiencing homelessness should really have a trauma-informed approach, not just to service delivery, but to how they engage their employers and how they educate their employers about how to help ensure the success of the job seekers that they're helping find work.
Awesome, thanks. I think we've got another question for Chris and Caitlin. What would you consider a good placement rate for service providers providing job training and employment programs for the homeless population?
That is a really difficult question, and it's one that we're typically kind of hesitant to answer, only because even when you're really kind of targeting similar populations, there's so many other variations from region to region with regard to what a successful placement rate looks like. It can be affected by local labor markets, local economies, the business cycle, you know, differences in the characteristics of the individuals that are being served. Even if you have two initiatives that are focused on serving people experiencing homelessness, they might in fact end up serving people whose characteristics look somewhat different. And so it's really, really hard to say what we would consider to be a successful placement rate. And certainly I'd want to know a little bit more about you know, which specific initiative we're measuring and look to comparable similar initiatives to get a sense of you know, what success would really look like for that individual program. And so I apologize for the non-answer, but that's really as complete an answer as I can give at this point.
This is Caitlin. I would also add that just in addition to placement into unsubsidized jobs, one thing that is also important to consider is retention in those jobs. So we have seen programs that, you know, are able to place folks, but then are those jobs necessarily the right matches? Are those quality jobs that have pathways to promotions? So just another factor to consider in terms of measurement. But I would defer to Chris on probably needing to consider an array of variables in determining what would be a good placement rate.
Great, thanks. I think we probably have time for just one or two more questions. We had a great one. What is something easy that we could do today to get involved in state WIOA planning?
Well, I think, you know, maybe the first thing is to just really identify who the individuals are that you need to establish a conversation with. You know, understand and know who is on your local board, who is on your state board, and how the WIBs in your area and in your state are currently operating, and then to, you know, start the conversation. I don't know if there's something quick and easy to be done, but just to let the decision makers know that you know, individuals experiencing homelessness specifically have advocates who are interested in making sure that they're well served by the WIOA funded system, and that you already have a sense of what the characteristics of those job seekers are and the kinds of services that they need. And so I think that you know, that would be the first step that I would think of.
Yeah, I would echo that. This is Caitlin. I was at a conference yesterday, and someone from DOL was speaking about this process and getting involved in plans. And there is an online resource where you can locate everyone on your local WIB. I'm completely blanking on the URL right now, but it's something that I could look up in my notes and find, and that we could tweet out later. But that's really just one practical way to see who you need to connect with and start having those conversations. So that resource does exist through DOL.
And also the states, as they develop their plans, are going to be seeking comments on their plans, and so it would be worthwhile to find out when and by what mechanism stakeholders will have an opportunity to provide comments on the plans that states are producing.
Great, thanks. We've got a question that says, how are you marketing individuals who have barriers from different levels, such as prison convictions? And then we thought there was a great follow-up question, what type of businesses are great to target, and that those two might kind of flow into each other. It's probably about what we have time for.
Mm-hmm. I would also note that we do have a few other resources that you might want to look to in our resource library to help kind of flesh out some of the things that we're not really going to have time to dig into today with regard to how to message to employers about the value of hiring individuals with various barriers and how to make the business case as well as the altruistic case to an employer. Of course, some industry sectors and occupations are more open than others and more accessible than others, especially with regard to people with criminal records. In some cases, certain occupations or sectors are absolutely closed off to them, and there are others that are a little bit more easy to access. I would say that overall what we hear from really effective job developers is that targeting small to mid-sized firms is a more effective strategy than targeting large firms, and that's because quite often at a large employer there are policies in place and procedures in place, and you can't really access the individual who has the authority to waive or modify those policies, whereas with a small to mid-sized employer you have the opportunity to actually speak with a proprietor or somebody who has decision-making authority and appeal to them directly, make the case to them directly, and they might have the ability to actually change their hiring policies based on the information that you're giving them. There are also all kinds of ways to characterize the services that you're providing to the job seeker as also presenting a lot of value to an employer. So any services that you're providing to an individual who's looking for work could also be characterized as a service to an employer, such as if you're providing something like transportation assistance, that's going to help that worker be a little bit more reliable as far as their timeliness and attendance at work. You might see that as primarily a service that you're offering to the individual, but that's also going to really provide a lot of value to an employer as well, potentially. If you're providing job coaching services or other kinds of regular supportive services to that individual, and let the employer know that you're there to intervene if an issue arises, or if you're going to be a resource that an employer could call if something comes up on the job that presents a problem. Just that added set of services that you're providing can really represent a value to an employer as well. In addition to that, we have an employer engagement toolkit that draws on lots of employer survey research in which employers themselves have communicated the ways in which they find value in partnering with employment programs for people who are facing barriers. And so, you can feel free to contact me directly if you'd like me to kind of point you in the right direction for some of those additional resources.
Awesome, Chris and the team, thank you so much. I just want to remind everyone that we have provided contact information for Chris and for Caitlin within the slides, and they would be more than welcome to answer a few of the other great questions that we received but didn't have a chance to get to, as well as any additional questions or resources you may need. And that will conclude today's webinar. I would really like to thank Chris and Katie and Nancy again for their participation, and remind you all that this full presentation, along with a recording of the webinar, will be available on the Alliance's website within a few days. So thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to next time.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.